I'm Eva, and I'm here with Thistle, and I'm sure my other co-host Moth the Cat will show up soon for another episode of my podcast, The Charm of It. It's about knitting. I unpack my basket, and I also like to talk about a general knitting topic as well as everything I've been up to. This week, it is going to be spring and summer knitting, so warm weather knitting. I apologize. Sorry, I think the neighborhood kids are out. If you can hear screaming, that's them playing. There's no children harmed. I apologize that it has been a month since my last episode. That was certainly not intended. Life just got a little crazy. So both good things like family visits and not so good things like my illnesses flaring up. And that's pretty much the 15-second explanation. I don't think you guys need more. If you are ever curious about keeping up with me between episodes, I am very active on Instagram, where I am The Charm of It as well. And I'm also on Ravelry, and my blog is wordpress.com, and both of those are The Charm of It. You can always find the links on the YouTube video. I'm definitely most active on Instagram. And if you leave comments on my photos, I definitely reply and follow you back. And for some reason, that's the thing I find easiest as far as making friendships. We do have a Ravelry group, which is The Charm of It. I am terrible at replying to people there. I read your comments and I love them and I think that I reply to them, and then for the next episode I suddenly realize that I'm like 6 comments behind. So I really apologize. I'm going to try to work on replying to things as soon as I read them. So that what happens is I write a little reply in my head, but imaginary replying does not actually get to the recipient. So apologies for that. I'm just drinking water, and I squeezed some lime juice into it, so it's a bit cloudy but delicious. It's pretty late in the day here, so no sugar or caffeine for me. I believe that is all the administrative that I need to talk about. I'm doing a slightly new setup so that hopefully my lens is cooperating with focusing again. As you can imagine, since it's been a month, I have a whole lot of things to talk about, so let's get started with finished objects. I began my little Fair Isle project, cat's in the lap, that I've been saving all my Fair Isle stuff for the spring and summer so that I had something to look forward to because I generally prefer cold weather. So this way I could be more excited about my less favorite seasons. And I began it, I've been wearing the hat, with this hat, which I named my Peas Blossom Beret because it's so floral and feminine that it almost strikes me as like, a crown that fairies would wear in a Midsummer Night's Dream production, which has always been one of my favorite Shakespeare plays, and I especially love the names he gives to the random minor fairies. So, I'll talk about it more in a minute, but here it is on. So you can see it's a little big, but it's not like gigantic. I think it's within the realms of beret style. I swear, my neighbors have not been making noise all day, so of course the second I turn on the camera, hopefully I'll be able to edit a lot of that out. So, there is a photograph, and I meant to have the book with me, but of course I forgot, on Alice Starmore's Fair Isle Knitting Book, and it's on one page, and it shows the crown of a hat that looks like this. And I fell in love with that photo, so basically I tried to reproduce the crown of the hat. And figuring out the decreases took me an embarrassingly long time because I was convinced that the green lines must be decreasing and I couldn't make it work. And then finally I realized that I should just do the decreases in the pink zone, and then it worked. And I also realized that she must be doing decreases beforehand, like just a couple rounds of decreases. She has a couple directions for how to design your own tam in the back of the book. So I looked at that as well, and it let me reverse engineer it. There were definitely some frustrated moments with the crown, but I did eventually figure it out. So what you see in the photo is this, essentially. And then for this part, I decided to repeat the flower motif because I really liked it. Woohoo, focusing. And then I just added this little floral motif on top to just make it, a bouquet and to echo the little vine pattern that you see here. And my colors are very similar to her colors as well. I did change a few things, but it's definitely, you can tell what it's inspired by, and I'm giving full credit to her. And I did corrugated ribbing as well. The yarn, it's all Shetland wool. I actually still have the bag. It's a combination of Jameson & Smith, and Campion, which is actually apparently Alice Darmore's first yarn, but I didn't know that, which I got some of them on D-Stash, and then I bought others. So you can find all the names for the yarn on my project page, as well as exactly how much each one took me. But the main ones that I had already gotten on D-Stash were these. Well, no, I got that one later. Okay, so basically it turned out I used 3 shades of pink, as well as a little bit of white for the flowers. And you can see that, as well as here. Then there were 2 shades of green. The party house must be out in their backyard now. Hopefully they won't swear. I had to start a new segment because my neighbors started swearing very loudly. So just in case it's in the background, you know, I don't want to suddenly have like an explicit rating on YouTube. As I was saying, I already had this blue, and then from Feral Knitter I ordered these 2 blues. I thought they were going to be more purple, which is what the photo in the book shows. I did not find on my monitor that the colors on the Feral Knitter website reflected reality, but that's okay because it still ended up looking pretty good. I definitely used the brighter blue more just because this blue, as much as I love it, it's very, very similar. Oh, but of course, now that I admired the way it was focusing before, it's not going to focus now. Maybe that'll help. There we go. So these 2 are so similar that there really wasn't much contrast between them, so I ended up using that, switching in the background a bit. You can just see that line. And finally, the pops of yellow. So as you can see, I used a lot of colors, and I had about 90 ends to weave in once I finished this hat. These are all the ends. Luckily, because Shetland wool is very fuzzy and it likes to stick to itself, I didn't have to do as thorough a job weaving in the ends as I usually do, so it really didn't take too long. But as you can see, I just kind of did it all up there, and then as soon as I washed and blocked it, all the yarns pretty much turned into their own little fabric. But yeah, before, like the whole time I was knitting, I was planning to just braid them all, which I'd read was a good technique, and then I braided it, and I mean, by this point, the braid was far thicker than my thumb, and I didn't really want that much in my hat, so I just wove them in. Since I didn't have to do super elaborate weaving in, it took maybe an hour and a half. So that's not bad. That's what, a minute an end. Now this was the very first, like this is the kickoff of my Fair Isle project, and I'm really pleased with the final result, and I've been wearing it and I'm really happy, but there are definitely some things that I learned from this project that I will change going forward. So let's do, a little bit of constructive criticism. First of all, when I did the corrugated rib, as you can see, I changed color in pink a lot, and then I decided to just change the blue color right in the middle. And I wanted it to line up with the lightest pink, but clearly I messed up there. But even if I hadn't, making it darker where the pink gets lighter kind of makes the glowing effect less extreme. And I really like that glowing effect, so I would not do that again. I forgot to mention, I did this like crazy Estonian braided cast on that took me, I think, 2 hours to do all the stitches, but it looks really good, and it didn't twist my yarn, and it's braided on both sides, so even if it flips up, I've got braids. There they are, 2 little braids. I would only recommend that if you have a whole lot of patience, because it's as much as weaving as it is knitting. So that's one thing that I would do different, the corrugated ribbing. The other thing I would do differently is to make it a little smaller. I'm constantly optimistic about my gauge and thinking I'm not as loose a knitter as I am. So I think if I'm going to do this many stitches, I need to go down a needle size. I did do the same needle size and the same amount of stitches as I did on my other Fair Isle hat, which the ribbing fits tighter. So I don't know if I just did the stranding more loose, or if now that I'm more comfortable with Fair Isle knitting, I've loosened up. This usually happens to me. But next time I would definitely do one section less. I just really wanted it to look like the photo, so that's why I had to do this many sections and kind of reverse engineer it. But at least the crown. Luckily it does stay on. But this is definitely as big a hat as I would want, and a slightly smaller one would be my preference. The only other thing that I would change is the photo. She has a lot more of this darker pink and a lot less of the middle pink. And I'm not sure why I decided to change that, but I think that hers looks a little better. But that's just for this hat. That's not something to remember for future projects. Just sharing. But yeah, this was a really fun way to kick off my Fair Isle color work. And I'm totally in love with the finished hat. And we've had such a cool spring that it's actually been really helpful to have a super springy, cheerful hat that actually keeps me warm in cold temperatures. I've been loving the cooler temperatures, so don't take that as a complaint. The other thing that I learned is that I knit color work very, very quickly because I really want to see, in this case I wanted to see if the decreases would work, and I couldn't see if the decreases would work until I had knit the rest of the hat. So I just kept knitting and knitting away. I think it took me 3 days to knit this. So considering one of my goals for the new year is to knit more slowly, we will see how much, whether I can slow myself down with Fair Isle knitting or not. Now my neighbors are apparently having a party. It's like a Thursday. No, it's Tuesday. But still, it's not a weekend, so I don't know what's gotten to them. That's the downside of warmer weather. They all come out. I had also finished, speaking of color work, I finished the elephant socks that you've seen on quite a few podcasts. They were a gift for a friend, and I gave them to her. And I forgot to even take photos, so I can't insert photos or anything. But she really loves them, and she tried one on and said it was a good fit. So that's that. And I'm going to start a new section and talk about my other finished objects. Speaking of socks that you've seen before, I have a half-finished object, and I put this project in hibernation, so you won't be seeing it for a while. But this is the first of my Nebulae knee socks, which I knit with the helix stripe method. Ooh, so there are no jogs. This is the inside of the sock because that's the way I plan to wear them. Nope. Apparently we're not going to focus. Let's see. There we go. No jogs. A little bit of laddering. I think that'll block out. And most of these yarns I over-dyed myself, and then I just did a 1x1 twisted rib on both sides because I want to be able to fold down the cuff for the cuff. I did the invisible rib bind off, which is a sewn bind off. You're basically grafting. But I forgot that with knee-high socks, I need a stretchier edge than I need on my regular socks, so I'm going to have to pull that out and redo it with a stretchier edge. But other than that, this is just ready for fall when I'll start knitting the next one. And I've talked pretty extensively about helix knitting on previous episodes. So let's see, we'll go around. As you can see, there's no jog. So if you're curious about that, my other episodes will give you more information. I found it a very clever technique, but also really fiddly because I tension my yarn in a fairly elaborate way to try to combat my loose knitting tendencies. So having to switch yarn 4 times in a round really slowed me down, which isn't a bad thing since I want to knit more slowly, but it did make it less enjoyable. Not because it took longer, but just because I couldn't knit as much. I spent a lot of time tensioning yarn instead. So I'm not sure how much helix knitting I'll do in the future, but it was fun to try out. This pair of socks you have not even seen. As soon as I finished the first helix sock or nebulae sock, I cast these on. And then I've just knitted away on them. It was so fun to just be able to knit around and around. That I finished them, I think a few days ago I finished the second one. So these are her pockets full of lichen socks. And it's after a Mary Oliver poem. I'll actually read it to you because she is one of my very favorite poets. I do not read that much poetry. It's always sort of intimidated me. I'm not really sure how to read it since I'm used to reading novels or short story collections where you just start at the beginning and can read through to the end. But I started reading Mary Oliver in college, and I've just loved her forever. So the poem is called Sleeping in the Forest. Here we go. I thought the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly, arranging her dark skirts, her pockets full of lichens and seeds. I slept as never before, a stone on the riverbed, nothing between me and the white fire of the stars but my thoughts, and they floated light as moths among the branches of the perfect trees. All night I heard the small kingdoms breathing around me, the insects, and the birds who do their work in the darkness. All night I rose and fell, as if in water, grappling with a luminous doom. By morning I had vanished at least a dozen times into something better. So you can find the link to that on my Ravelry project page if you would like to read it for yourself or do more of Mary Oliver. All of her poems are incredible and they are very much inspired by nature. And this yarn is actually by my friend Saskia, who, sorry, itchy nose, I met via Instagram, and she is a knitter, and she's also interested in local wool and environmentally friendly yarn, and she also dyes yarn. So she sent me this. She's planning to open an Etsy shop where she sells her hand-dyed yarn, and she asked if I would like a skein in return for knitting up the socks, so testing the yarn, and then I'm going to send her photographs. And I already know what I'm going to do to take photos of this. And she surprised me with the color, because of course I agreed. So this is a non-superwash sock yarn, and I have the tag. It's from a Dutch sheep. Saskia is Dutch, but she lives in Germany. Oh, I have the tag in here. Sorry. See, this is what happens when you have too much for your podcast. And both pets are my lap, so I'm not going to be able to get up if I left it somewhere. Okay. I'll put the information on my project page, but it's from a Dutch sheep, and the wool was basically going to waste. And it's definitely a sock yarn wool in the sense that you're not going to really want this right around your neck, but I think it's going to be super durable for socks. So it's from Dutch sheep, and then it's spun at a nearby mill in England, I believe, and then she dyes it in Germany. So if you're in Europe, that's going to be a very low carbon footprint. But even in the US, I really like supporting local and environmentally friendly yarn. I'm sorry. It was going so well. There we go. And I just find her dyeing breathtaking. If you follow her on Instagram, I'll include a link to her account. It's Ovis, etc. But that's a lot of letters, so I'll include the link in the show notes. She's knit up a few socks with her own dyes, and they always remind me of watercolors. So just all of the beautiful greens and a little bit of blue and gray, and these just reminded me so much of lichen in the woods. So that's how they got their name. I did experiment with several different patterns before settling on this one. I don't knit a lot with variegated yarns, and so first I was trying Inlay by Hunter Hammerson, which is a twisted stitch pattern, but it's very subtle and it was just completely lost in the patterning. Then I tried another one, and the yarn it didn't seem like it was the most flattering to the yarn. And then I remembered, I believe in Clara Park, she talks about how two-ply yarn, which is what this is, looks really good in lace. So I found this pattern, which is called Spring Fern Pattern. I'm sorry again about the party house. If you believe it, it's actually a few houses down. That's how noisy they are. And as soon as I tried out the Spring Fern, I just really loved how the lace pattern worked with the yarn. Woo. And as you can tell, it was a really simple lace pattern, so I memorized it really quickly. You just have to count to 9 over and over. And so it pretty much seemed to fly by. I did my own heel because I just love the Eye of Partridge heels. And I used the technique that is shown in the Water for Elephant socks, which is a really clever way of doing the eye of partridge, so that you, I don't know, I hadn't seen that method of doing it before, and I really like it. And then with the gusset, I added just a touch of ribbing, just because I thought it would be fun to kind of outline the sock. And then I did my own toe. I have no idea what the pattern called for. That's what happens when you've been knitting socks for a while. You get into your preferences and you get stuck there. And of course, lace socks always look better on, and I am not going to buy sock blockers because I'd rather spend my money on yarn. So, let's see. There we go. So that's what it looks like on. And I have not worn them yet because I want them to look really nice when I take the photographs, but I am completely in love with them. So, Saskia, I will let you guys know when she opens her shop. And yeah, definitely someone to watch. There's that nice little rib line that shows when I'm wearing it. I think that's everything about those. So, yep, very pleased with that. And then I will start a new segment and come back with my final finished object. This is going to be a long episode. Once I finished the socks, I decided it was time to start another colorwork project. Since they both use small needles, I really wanted to get those socks finished up, since I had promised Saskia that I would test that yarn out for her. So, as I think in my last episode I talked about the Knit Sonic book, and I thought that her swatching method would be perfect for making a wall hanging. Because I have a gallery wall on that side. You can see it on Instagram if you're curious. And there's like a blank space that I thought would be perfect for some knitting, because it would be nice to demonstrate my love of textiles a little more clearly. So I looked online and I found my inspiration photo. It's a chinoiserie, there we go, wallpaper that was like hand painted in the 18th century in Houghton House. British people tend to pronounce their last names strangely when they're aristocrats, so I'll include a link. I don't want to put it in here because of potential copyright issues. But I found that painting for inspiration, and I wanted to use warmer colors from the Alice Starmore yarn that I could love, and I love to have them around me, but I cannot wear them right next to my face. So I started swatching, and just today I have my finished wall hanging. So obviously I started down here. And this was definitely an exercise in learning for me. I used the Knit Sonic swatching method, so that's what gave me these nice little fringes. And it's already up on my wall. I just popped it down so that we could talk about it a bit. First of all, I've learned that as someone who's new to Fair Isle type stranded color work, I should not have chosen a painting for my inspiration. It is incredibly difficult to translate painting into knitting, because you can't have more than 2 colors in a row, and so it's inevitably going to look different. So I had to keep reminding myself that, first of all, perfection is the enemy of good, and secondly, that I was just looking for inspiration. I did not need to replicate this wallpaper in order to have a successful finished tapestry of my own. So with those in mind, I started out, I wish that I could show you the picture, but if you'll follow the link, basically it's the photo that I loved, and there's the wallpaper on the back, which is a blue background with a lot of traveling vines and flowers, very fluid in golds and pinks and a little bit of cream. And then in front of the wallpaper is this kind of gold cabinet and a stork. I wish I could have put the stork in the tapestry, but. And so I really liked that. So what I did was first, and then the very bottom of the wallpaper has like storm-tossed seas in a much darker color than you see on the rest of the wall, and then the wallpaper, the background gradually gets lighter as you go up. So that's why I used a quite rich teal at the bottom, and then all the way up to a very pale blue up here. And it's interesting because these two yellows, they look quite similar. Here, we'll do it this way. They almost look like they're the same shade, but they're not. I think it's because this one is surrounded by darker colors and this one is surrounded by lighter colors. So it's just interesting how that goes. So first off, I did a more typical Fair Isle pattern, and I just wanted to capture the delicacy of the lines on the wallpaper. And I think that I adapted this from the Alice Starmore book. I did not draw my own motif because I tried a couple of hand-drawn motifs and they just weren't working as well. So I decided clearly I just need to continue my apprenticeship before jumping into those waters. And I played with several different options, especially for the center line. In traditional Fair Isle, a lot of times the center line is worked in a different color. And it took me a while to figure out what color combination best emphasized the center without overwhelming the rest of it. And then I wanted to do one that represented the cabinet, which has a lot more golds in it. So I took these two from Alice Starmore's book, but then I adapted them. Like, you know, I modified them. And then this one I just drew on my own. I was trying to be brave. And as you can see, I did a lot of shading in this one. And really, that's what I seem to love most. I loved it in the hat as well. I just really love being able to move through different shades and end up with this glowing center. It was a little tricky. There are a lot of blues in the Alice Starmore Hebridean 2-ply, and I have them all, well, most of them. But there isn't really a blue that moves between this one and this one. There's nothing in between. So that made it a bit more of a challenge. And I ripped back quite a bit. But eventually I got to where I liked it. And I wanted to have some vertical lines as well. So that's why I did this. And of course this is knit in the round. And then I steeked it. It was my first steek ever. It was a little frightening, not because I thought the knitting was going to unravel, but because once you steek, you can't frog knit anymore. So, you know, you're committed. But I think it went well. And finally, for this top half, I wanted to try to replicate the beautiful traveling vines across the wallpaper. And it turns out my blue is a little darker than the wallpaper blue, and there was nothing I could do about that. So I ended up keeping the same background color for the whole thing. And then I picked 3 different combinations of dark and light colors for these leaves, and I just alternated them. And what I did was, in addition to the leaves, I did this section of little flowers. And then I really wanted the one vine to be able to move, because if you look, I hope the sun's not messing that up too badly. Anyway, if you look at the wallpaper, one of the branches travels across most of the page. So what I did, at first I wasn't really sure how I was going to do that, but then I remembered the Pointel socks that I knit with Cookie A, and how she moves these bands just by doing decreases and increases. So that's what I did after the first repeat of this chart, which I found the leaf pattern in the Alice Starmore book, but then I modified it again, and I just did the little scattered petals and flowers on my own, which you can tell. But anyway, after the first repeat, about every other round, I would decrease one over here and increase one over here so that you get a little bit of movement with the branch. Oh, hello, sun. And so I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. I certainly do not think that it is perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but this is a learning process, and I'm definitely still in the apprentice stage of all my knitting, but especially of color work. So I decided to just be proud of myself. It doesn't have to be perfect. What was I going to say? So moving on to the constructive criticism, things that I've learned. I think if I were going to do it again, I would probably, instead of alternating these colors, I'd probably do 2 leaves of the pinks, reds, 2 leaves of the yellows, and 2 leaves of the blues, so that it would be going from darker colors to lighter colors. And I think it would be more coherent as a vine if these were matching. I also would do fewer random stitches of the contrast color in the floral sections. I really wanted to have a lot of the contrast color, so in addition to the little flower motifs, I just like randomly scattered stitches around to try to replicate petals, but I think it ends up looking busy and the flowers get a little lost. So those are the main things that I learned. I also I tried the wave transition that Alice Starmore suggests, and I replicated it at the top. I don't really like it. I'm not really a chevron person. I like curves more than points. And when I say I don't really like it, I mean I love this finished piece. I'm very proud of it. I'm happy to put it on my wall. I'm just nitpicking for future reference. But yeah, so I had a really fun time doing this. I used a whole bunch of colors. I'll list them on my project page, but I'm not going to show them all to you because that would take forever. And it really kind of encouraged me to jump in with both feet and not be so afraid of making mistakes or wasting my yarn. So this episode's question and topic are the same. In the forum quite a while ago, Pearl White, who is Sigrid, hope I pronounced that correctly, asked basically what to knit in the spring and summer. And she mentioned that it seems odd to be knitting with wool in the warmer months. I don't have that like philosophical issue. I love wool. I'm happy to knit with it year round. But I don't have air conditioning and I am on a higher floor. So my apartment gets pretty warm in the summer. So I do not want a lap full of wool for that reason in the summer. So my strategy is kind of multi-pronged. First off, if I'm going to knit wool projects, I tend to choose smaller ones. So like a sock or a hat or mitts, things that even when they're almost done are never going to sit in my lap like a blanket, which I don't like. So I won't knit a sweater, for example. I suppose you could knit one in pieces, but that would probably, at some point, the fact is going to sit in my lap. Can you tell that I really, really don't like that? So I've realized that for me, because I love knitting socks, and I love knitting sweaters, and for me it almost makes more sense to knit all my sweaters in the cooler weather, all my wool sweaters, and then switch to socks for warmer weather. So I might try that in a more cohesive or more intentional process in the future, but that's just something that I like to do. So I tend to knit with finer weight wool as well, fingering, lace. That I don't knit much with lace, but that kind of idea. I'll probably knit maybe a worsted weight hat or something out of wool. That doesn't really tend to bother me. I think I knit a couple of those last summer, once again because it's small. So I don't mind the wool moving through my fingers. It's when it's resting on my lap, making me overheated, that I get a little cranky. As I mentioned, I am doing a bunch of stranded color work this spring and summer, which is obviously done with wool. And that was just so that I would look forward to it because summer is my least favorite season. And so spring, I'm already dreading the approach of summer. But I'm determined to not, despise summer this year, not wish it away. So that's why I saved Fair Isle experimenting for the warmer months, not because I think it's going to help me stay cool. The other thing that I do is switch to knitting with plant fibers. And I'm going to hop in, well, no, I can do that. So, blinded by the sun. So, I actually have 3 plant fiber sweaters planned for this spring and summer. One of them is for me out of Quince & Company's Sparrow, which is an organic linen. I've already started that, so if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen it. One is a cardigan for my mother with yarn that I already have. I actually bought it to make her a blanket. She is very sensitive to wool, so she can't really use that. So I got her a plant fiber in a sale to make a blanket. But she'd rather have a sweater, which is great because I would rather knit a sweater. And then I'm going to knit a sweater for my sister out of a silk cotton blend. And that was her Christmas present. The IOU was her Christmas present, and I told her that I wasn't going to knit it until summer, because why would you knit with plant fibers in the winter? And for me, especially with the arthritis in my hands, I don't enjoy knitting with plant fibers as much as I enjoy knitting with wool. I mean, there's just not the same balance and elasticity, and so it's harder on my hands. So the way that I balance that out is I only knit one plant fiber at a time, like one project. I rotate projects, so if I have 3 projects, one of them will be plant-based and the other 2 will be wool. And then if I knit, say, I don't know, 400 stitches before taking a break in a wool project, I'll only knit 200 in the plant project before taking a break. So just trying to be aware of the extra stress on my hands and taking more rest accordingly. It works for me. I'm quite a bit of the way into the linen sweater that I'm knitting for myself, so it's a way to keep knitting. I have another project planned in a worsted weight plant fiber yarn, but I'll talk more about that when we get to stash acquisition or enhancement. And I think that's pretty much my spring-summer approach, is making my wool-based projects smaller in size. I would never knit a wool blanket in the summer because I don't have air conditioning. And then alternating it with plant fiber projects that I can wear during the warmer months, so that I'm not only knitting for winter, because that would be a bit demoralizing. I also have a few little projects that have been in my queue for a while, like boot cuffs, that kind of thing, that I think summer will be the perfect time to do, because I don't feel the pressure to like be knitting my wool sweaters quickly so that I can wear them while the weather's still cold. So I thought I would have more to say about this topic, because obviously I used to live in Texas, but I had air conditioning in Texas, and I pretty much just detested the climate. So I tried to pretend it didn't exist. I did knit with plant fibers occasionally, but pretty much I was just annoyed to be living in such a hot climate, so I'm not a whole lot of use there. I'm sure that people who enjoy hot climates and are knitters probably have better ideas than me. But yeah, so I certainly don't give up wool just because it's summer. I also plan to try a bit more other textile crafting. Like, I have a cross-stitch kit that I received for Christmas a couple of years ago, and I'd really like to get that done. I'm a little worried because I have a lot of neck and shoulder issues, and when you're knitting, you don't have to look at the knitting all the time, but with your cross-stitching, it seems like you're going to have to be doing this a lot, which is really hard on my neck and shoulders. And then I also have a couple dresses. I have linen fabric for a couple dresses, one of which I've begun, that I would like to sew for spring and summer, just so that I can wear them and not die of heat stroke. It doesn't get super hot here, but for me, as soon as it's over 70 degrees, which is what, 20-ish Celsius, I am no longer happy. So I have found that wearing a bunch of very comfortable linen and cotton lightweight clothes helps me enjoy summer a lot more. So I'd like to sew myself a few sundresses. It's very difficult for me to find dresses that fit because I have a very low waist. So most dresses, the waistband is too high. Or you find a linen dress and it's lined in like acetate or polyester, which defeats the entire purpose of wearing linen. So that rant aside, I do plan to venture into some other textile crafts, but I would guess that knitting is still going to be my major making endeavor, just because I really love it. It seems to fit well with my illnesses and with my lifestyle. You know, you can just pick up your needles and knit for a little bit in a basket. You don't have to drag out the really heavy sewing machine and set everything up. Since I live in a small apartment, I lose my dining table when I have my sewing set up, so that's another issue. Cross stitch might work for that though, because presumably it's the same idea. And since the days are a lot longer, you get a lot more light than you do in the winter. So if you have any suggestions for spring and summer knitting, or you want to share your own knitting in hot weather survival techniques, well, I guess some people enjoy the heat, so you don't need to survive. Feel free to share them in the Ravelry group. I always start a thread for the episode, so that will probably help Sigrid to hear your thoughts. But yeah, I certainly think that wool knitting in the summer is perfectly appropriate, you know, as long as it's smaller projects. When I come back, I will tell you about my works in progress. Should have had the basket over. So because I have so many finished objects, I only actually have 2 works in progress, and one of them I've just realized I'm going to have to reknit. So we'll talk about that one first. This is my Rusalka cowl, which I'm knitting with my birthday yarn. I thought I would show you. I got my Met Opera thing, and look what's on the cover. It's the Rusalka Opera. I guess when I'm speaking English, I don't pronounce it correctly, but so for those who don't know, Rusaki are water spirits, found in Eastern Europe. And so the opera is obviously about one of them. I think that's a really beautiful cover. And they're talked a lot about in the book Dancing Goddesses, which I really enjoy. And a lot about textiles and agricultural life and how that's related to these, because they're imagined as basically the spirits of young women who die before they've been married. So it's kind of as if they become symbols of fertility because they've never had children, so their potential fertility is still up for grabs. But yeah, so Dancing Goddesses, I will include that in the show notes as well. It's an excellent book. But I named the cattle that because this is my birthday yarn that I showed you last time, and it seems so watery and beautiful, and it's probably going to look a bit greener today because of the evening sun, which warms things up. But this is from Blue Moon Fiber Arts. It's their Silky Victoria base, which is 85% Polworth and 15% silk. Hang on. There we go. And I got it for my birthday because I love hand-dyed yarn, but can't always afford it, so it's a nice birthday treat. And then it was a new breed for me to try. I really enjoy trying out different breed-specific yarns. I apologize for all the hair. I must be shedding too with spring approaching. So I have really enjoyed knitting with this. And this is a self-designed pattern. I just found this, which is the Indian cross stitch pattern, as a reversible stitch, as you can see, in my Barbara Walker Treasury. And then I did this reversible cable on both edges, and I was very inspired by the Pearl Soho Rivulet scarf, I think. I mentioned it in my show notes. It turns out all you have to do to make a cable reversible is, I'm trying to avoid the sun, is doing it in ribbing instead of plain stockinette. So that's really easy, and I did twisted ribbing because that's what the Pearl Soho scarf did, and I really liked that approach. I'm going to pause you guys and put my blind down so that the sun is not quite set. Woo, much better, for me at least. I can see again. As I was saying, turns out it's really easy to make reversible cables. So I started with the Pearl Soho one. It's a free pattern. And then I changed mine to be a bit bigger, and I really wanted it to look like waves. So I ended up alternating which row I was cabling on. So can you guys guess why I'm going to frog this? It's supposed to be a cowl, and it's almost wide enough to be a blanket. So today I was knitting on it all happily, and then for some reason this is the first time I went to try it on, and I realized it was just way too wide. Like, no, you're not even going to be able to see all the cool details because it's going to be so squished. I do not have a very long neck, and this is just ridiculous. So I am 80% of the way through the skein, and it was almost 700 yards, so that's a lot of knitting. But luckily, I really enjoyed knitting with this. It's bouncy and cheerful, and it's got a little bit more of a drape to it than merino does, which makes sense. I talked more about where Polish sheep came from on the last episode. But, so I don't mind having to re-knit it. I think what I'm going to do is just make this middle panel half. So it will be 2. And 2, so it'll be that wide instead. Oops. Oh well. I tried to demonstrate. Anyway, it'll be about a little more than half the width that it is now, and I think that'll be a lot better, and it'll let me make it longer because this isn't nearly as long as I wanted it, and I'm almost out of yarn. But I'm not sure if I'm going to cast that on right away. Luckily, I have my Swift now, so frogging it'll be a little easier. I just spin my Swift around instead of having to pull it by hand, which is really hard on my neck and shoulders. But if I start it right away, I'm going to end up with a lap full of wool, probably in late June, because I'm just going to graft it at the end. I'm not knitting it in pieces. So I might wait until fall to restart it. We'll see. But yeah, so obviously that's been taking a lot of knitting time because that's how much I've done. It's a really fun pattern. It's a 6-row repeat basically. It's actually 12 because you're staggering, but 4 of the rows are garter and then 2 of them have some action. So I think that's a good balance for me. I don't like overly fiddly neckwear because I did a more complicated lace design on my first little teal scarf, the antiquarian scarf, and then when you're wearing it you can't see it, so there's not much counting involved with this, which is nice. And yeah, I'm not really sure what is going on with the width, and I'm not sure why it took me this long to realize that it was too wide. But you know, that's okay. I don't mind reknitting with the wool. So my other work in progress has been more successful, and that is the linen cardigan I was telling you about. I am calling this my formalized curiosity cardigan, and it's named after a quotation from Zora Neale Hurston, who is one of my favorite authors, and she says research is formalized curiosity, which I love because I enjoy researching. And the pattern reminds me of the 20s and 30s, so I wanted to give it that kind of reference because it kind of looks Art Deco. So, this is what I have so far. As you can see, it's top down and it's a raglan construction and the body is all over lace. It's a really beautiful lace pattern. Usually I prefer curves to points, but this, I love it. I can't remember what they call it in the book. Sorry about the loose end. Here we go. And this is the lace cardigan from the book, The Art of Seamless Knitting. So I just checked it out from my library, so it's a free pattern for me, which is nice. And the book is actually a really useful reference. I plan to read it more thoroughly and then talk about it on one of the episodes because there is a whole lot of details on how to shape in lace and cables and that kind of stuff. So if you enjoy knitting more complicated garments, or if you wish you could but you're not really sure, I think it could actually be a really good resource, especially if you enjoy seamless. I have mainly knit bottom up, so it was kind of interesting to me doing top down. Those first few rows are crazy because there's a lace panel on the sleeve too, but once you get into the rhythm of it, it's fun, and it's nice to be able to try it on, I guess. My swatch, which I was going to show you, did not change at all in washing, so I can try it on knowing that whatever I try on here is going to work. So as you can see, this is much drapier than this, which is a little stiff. And I knit a cardigan out of this yarn, which is Quince & Company's Sparrow, last year. It's their organic linen. It's not made in the US, it's made in Europe. Apparently there's just not a big enough linen industry here, but I love it. And I machine wash and dry it because it makes it softer and not fluffy, but you know, very drapey. And the cardigan that I knit last summer has become one of my very favorite staples in my wardrobe. So even though it's quite pricey, I've decided one a year is worth it. And it's not super fun to knit with compared to wool. I doubt that's going to focus. Maybe if I cover my face and get closer to the camera. Okay, so as you can see, it's a bit like twine, but very pretty soft twine. But I just mean there's no elasticity in there the way there is in wool. But as long as I take frequent breaks, it hasn't been that much of a problem. The other thing to look out for with knitting with linen, and probably most plant-based fibers, depending on how they're spun, is if a stitch pops off your needle, it will run. Like when I'm normally knitting, stitches pop off my needle and I just put them back on. It's not a big deal. But with this, I have to be careful because it will definitely run like 3 rows before I've even noticed that it's off the needles. And since I tend to knit with all my stitches up near the tip, that can be a problem for me. I'm knitting this on a longer cable just so that I can try it on without having to fuss about it. But what was I going to say? Oh, the lace is actually very intuitive. and I feel like it looks much more complicated than it is to knit because it's this nice geometric procession. It's really easy to memorize. You do need, like, it's like an 18 stitch repeat, and I really enjoy 3s and 9s and 6s, so I'm happy about that, as nerdy as that probably sounds. And the wrong side rows are pretty much rust rows. I don't know if you can tell, but this is twisted ribbing. So obviously on the wrong side rows, you also have to do twisted ribbing. So you're purling through the back loop, which, depending on how you feel about that, might be a bit fussy. But I knit that twisted stitch cardigan last autumn, my Melusine cardigan, and so I'm fine knitting purling through the back loop now. So I'm really in love with how this is turning out. I am on my 3rd skein. I can't remember what the color name is. Nanny Berry. Starting the segment with an extreme close-up of the yarn so that you can see it's that beautiful kind of rose color, tea rose color. And here's the label. I don't usually do labels, do I? So when it came time to decide on a color, you have probably noticed that I am a big fan of pinks in general. Pinks and blue-greens are probably my 2 favorite. I don't know, they're very well represented in my wardrobe. But I realized that this color would go really well with almost all of my summer dresses, which is what I like to wear these kinds of cardigans with, because I prefer not to tan, and my skin tans really quickly. So once the sun is strong, I need to wear long sleeves, but I want them to be lightweight. So that's why linen cardigans are so useful to me. And yeah, so I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say about it. I'm sure I'll talk more about it in the future. It's been put on hold because the wall tapestry had got all of my attention, because I get a little bit focused on seeing what the charts are going to look like when I do stranded color work, as I said before. Still need to work on slowing that knitting down, but it's amazing how quickly it has grown, really. I've been knitting so many, I don't know, I've knit quite a few sweaters in pieces, so I guess my Tide Pool cardigan was all in one, but it was bottom up. So it's fun with top down. Once you've separated for the sleeves, the rounds feel a lot shorter. Oh, I remember the other thing I wanted to say. So linen has a tendency to bias, and that only matters if you're knitting in the round. Since I'm knitting a cardigan, the body is flat, but the sleeves are knit in the round. And that's what I did for my cardigan last summer out of Sparrow, and sure enough, the sleeves do twist a bit. So for this cardigan, I'm going to knit the sleeves flat and just seam them at the end. And that'll be simple because the lace is on top. The cardigan I made last year, I put the lace underneath, and so I didn't really want to have to seam with that. But yeah, I would definitely recommend knitting linen pieces flat. Although I think this is the only linen I've knit with. I have felt several other linens in stores. My old yarn store in Texas had quite a few linens, of course. And all the other 100% linens I felt are much coarser than this is, and much stiffer. So I would definitely recommend this, as long as you know what you're getting into. It's not going to feel like wool. And I'm really enjoying the pattern. It's got quite a few charts, and so at first you're having to kind of flip back and forth when you're starting these rounds between multiple charts, but I managed to figure out pretty quickly that I only really needed to look at 1 or 2, and I just memorized the rest. And the front and back, I figured out where I should be looking for those. So then I didn't have to flip back and forth anymore. So the first rows of this pattern were definitely the slowest and fiddliest, and after that it becomes a lot more intuitive, and you don't have to stare at your charts all the time. Since I follow patterns on my phone instead of printing them out, having to switch back and forth between charts is really annoying because I can't just lay out the papers in front of me. Yeah, I'm really in love with this. Ooh, almost took myself out. I guess I'll talk about the needles. These are my heavy metal needles from Diet Craft. They're the same company that makes my wooden Darn Pretty needles. and they make all of their needles in Vermont. And I've mentioned before that you can't buy the wooden needles because their wood supplier had a terrible fire, so they don't have wood anymore. But you can buy these needles, and they're interchangeables in size 0s through 3. The set includes 0, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3. And the joint on them, they swivel, first of all. You probably can't see that. But they're swiveling around their cable, and the joint is just impeccable. You can't feel it once you have your needle twisted in. I really like having interchangeable sets because then when I'm swatching for gauge, I don't have to worry about needing to go down or up in needle size because I already own all the needles. So for me, it was worth it to just buy the set all at once. And these are nice because the metal isn't super slick. I don't like really slippery needles, probably because I keep all my stitches up towards the tip. And then the tip is nice and pointy, which I also really like. My other favorite metal needles are Addi Turbo Lace, in case that helps, if you're curious about them. The only downside to me is that they're stainless steel and they're solid, and so I think these are the 1.5s. I just went down because I've started the waist shaping. So rather than try to fuss with lace, I just started knitting on a size 2, and then I'll just slowly decrease the needle sizes as I get closer to my waist. Anyway, so up to size 2 it's fine, but the size 3s are quite heavy. So that's the only downside to me. And I'm not sure how much of that is due to my arthritis, but I would definitely highly recommend them, and they come in their own little case, which is nice. And I enjoy knitting on them. I was going to do a Knits in the Wild segment, but this episode is being so long that I think I'll save it for next time because I'm unlikely to have a lot of new photos next time, so we'll just have like a time warp and show cold weather gear in late May. I am participating in Me Made May, which is when you try to wear one handmade item a day and post photos. So I've been doing quite a few outfit or selfie shots on Instagram, in case you're interested. The reason why I don't put Instagram photos on my podcast is because I just take them with my iPhone, and I don't think that the quality is going to be good enough to like stuff them in. But that's certainly a place to see Knits in the Wild. So I think I'll just move on to stash enhancement, which a little bit of my buying and a little bit of gifts. And this should be the last major stash enhancement for a while. So see you in a minute. The Quince & Company Sparrow yarn was my first stash enhancement. I ordered that at the end of April because I wanted to cast on my cardigan on May 1st. And ended up casting on April 30th because the yarn arrived early. But luckily I'm not doing it for knit along, so it doesn't matter. And I received a birthday gift certificate to Quince & Company from a very kind viewer. So thank you. I wanted to say that here. It helped towards the purchase, especially since the cost of Sparrow definitely puts it in the luxury category for me. I needed 6 skeins for my sweater, so that came to $56 before shipping. So it was nice to have a gift card to help out. My other birthday gift, this is so awesome, is from another online friend who I've known for quite a few years actually. And she found this awesome yarn that is inspired by pets, and she found one that looks like thistle and one that looks like moth. So they're both 100% superwash Blueface Leicester, 437 yards and 100 grams. So a light fingering. Oh, of course, now my camera's not going to behave again. It was doing so well. There we go. So this is the thistle one. And on my stash photos, I took a photo of the yarn next to each of the pets. And then the other one is the moth one. And as you can see, the inspiration cat is an all-over tortie. So this matches Moth's points perfectly. It's not as cream as Moth, obviously, but you can see in the photo on my stash page how closely it matches like her ears and tail and that kind of stuff. She finally went over to the couch, gave up on me. And this is just such a pleasant surprise, and I'm just tickled pink about it. At first I thought I might try to do this in a sweater, but then I realized that these are not my most flattering colors next to my face. So I'll probably use this skein for socks and save enough to make a little headband to do moth ears so that I can dress up as her for Halloween, because yes, I am that kind of person. And then I haven't decided yet what to do with this. I guess it could be a shawl, something like that. Of course, it could be socks, but I really like Blue Face Luster, and it has such a nice drape. So maybe I'll have it as a shawl. If you have any suggestions or ideas, please let me know. It's a very beautiful variegated gray. And that was just so sweet and thoughtful. And then my own stash enhancements. Another one of my big summer projects, and I mentioned this, is I'm going to daft the Water for Elephant sock pattern, which I just finished knitting my second pair of those. They were both gifts. I'm going to adapt that pattern to make a chair cover for my computer chair, which right now I have a scarf on because it's just one of those cheap office chairs. I got it at Goodwill for like $6. And the fabric it's upholstered in, like, irritates my skin. So I have to have something over it. And having a scarf over it, the scarf tends to like droop and sag and get caught in the wheels, and it's really annoying. So I'm going to do a little custom cover. And I heard about this yarn, which is Barocco Remix from Tanya of the Sampler Girl, who she's got a podcast. Sometimes it's video, sometimes it's audio, and she's just so fun. She has a very infectious laugh, and she does a lot of great projects, and we have a lot of similar aesthetics. We both really enjoy costume dramas and that kind of thing, so check her out if you haven't. But she knit a shawl out of this yarn and was telling me how much she liked it. So I thought it would be absolutely perfect because it's 100% recycled, which I really like because I don't like to buy conventional cotton retail. There's a lot of issues around cotton industries, both environmental issues and labor issues, and so I just prefer to avoid it. And that's part of why knitting with plant fibers is tricky for me, is because a lot of the plant fibers include conventional cotton, and the ones that include organic are often out of my price range. So recycled is exciting, and this is 30% nylon, 27% cotton, 24% acrylic, 10% silk, and 9% linen. I don't normally knit with acrylic because it makes my hands itch, but I think in a blend it'll be fine. And I actually really like the high nylon content because nylon was designed to imitate a lot of the aspects of wool. So it should make knitting with this a little more bouncy and fun. So I got this 3 balls of this in, I think it's the Ocean colorway, from D-Stash, a D-Stash, on Ravelry. I'm not really sure how much yarn it's going to take. So this is going to be the background color. So I've got, I don't know, 216 times 3, 648 yards to work with for my chair cover. Sure, that'll be enough. And if there's left over, then I'll be able to do something with it because teal is my other favorite color. And I don't have a lot of teal in my room decor, so it'll be really nice to have a little teal thing. I look at my computer chair all the time that I'm sitting on my couch watching. I watch like Netflix or YouTube on my computer. I don't have a TV, so it'll be really nice. I decided it was worth the money and time to make it pretty and have this really cool pattern. So I'm really excited to adapt it. So this is going to be the background, and then when I order the yarn for my sister's cardigan, the website I'm going to buy it from also carries this line. So I'm going to buy an elephant appropriate neutral there, and I'll get 2 balls of that, and that should be enough. I just really don't want to have to run out of yarn. But yes, I'm really excited about that project, and I will probably knit my mom's cardigan first. She's coming up to visit in July, so I want her to be able to try it on then. And it is a worsted weight cardigan, so it shouldn't take too long, but better start then than, you know, be like, oh, well, I have a really pretty chair cover. Sorry, you don't have a sweater yet. Her birthday is in June, and it's going to be her birthday gift. I'm also going to knit her a pair of socks. I knit her a pair of socks for every Mother's Day. This year she wanted taller socks, so I haven't started those yet because, once again, she doesn't like wool. So I'm going to use, I've made her 2 pairs of socks out of the Haiku Kobasi, which stands for cotton bamboo silk, but there's a really high elastic content, so it's a really nice bouncy yarn. It doesn't hurt my hands to work with. And so because I've knit her 2 pairs of socks, and she usually prefers short socks, and she's got really little feet, we've got a lot of that yarn left over. So I'm going to make her, she liked my Hermione everyday socks with the contrasting toes and heels that I did this winter. So I'm going to make her a pair of those. I just need to find out how high she wants the legs. So I'll probably cast those on once I finish my sweater, because I don't want to have more than one plant project going on at the same time, as I already mentioned. I am rambling now. I'm going to have to start one final segment because I have one more stash acquisition to talk about, and then I'll let you guys go. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. So my last stash acquisition was another treat to myself. My friend Julie, who is Julie Rose, maybe Julie Rose Sews, on Instagram. So we connected there, and she opened an Etsy shop called Sweet Sparrow Yarns with her hand-dyed yarn. And she takes a lot of her inspiration from classic childhood books like The Secret Garden, which I also love, and pretty much all the colorways she does I am in love with. She enjoys muted colors like I do. And when she opened her shop, all of her yarns are superwash, and I don't buy superwash yarn. Sometimes I do for socks, but if I'm going to like splurge on hand-dyed fancy yarn, I want it to be near my face. I don't want it to be socks. So I kind of gently poked her, suggesting that perhaps she should sell some non-superwash wool. And in her last update, she added a new fingering weight yarn that's 50% wool, 50% silk. I think it's 50% merino. And it's regular merino. It's not superwash. So, of course, I had to buy a skein. And I actually contacted her before the update, and I asked if I could reserve a colorway that I particularly wanted, because I have never tried to play that, like, you know, yarn ninja game before, and I didn't really want to have to play it this time. And she graciously agreed, so I have one skein of the Moor, which I absolutely love, and the base is called Hummingbird. So, yeah, it's 50% merino, 50% silk, and it's 438 yards and 100 grams. So she was inspired by the description of the Moor when Mary first arrives at Misselthwaite Manor, which has to be one of the best place names in literature. And so it kind of looks gray from far away, but then up close it's got all these different colors running through it. A lot of green, and a little bit of blue and purple, and then a little bit of yellow, but it works next to me, even though I can't usually wear yellows. It's magic. So it works with my coloring. I had arrived when my mom was visiting. She was visiting her mother, who lives near me, for Mother's Day, so we got to say hi. And she thought it was the same color as my eyes. So, as I was saying, now I have to decide what to do with it. And there's this sweater pattern that Em talked about on her Knitting Pretty podcast, and she was talking about trends. And it's so cool. I followed the link that she suggested. And it's like entrelac. There's an entrelac pattern done in a multicolored yarn up the front. And then the rest of it is just a plain sweater. And the entrelac part calls for 150-gram skein of yarn. So I could use half of this to do the decorative panel on the sweater, and then have the other half to do a shorter star shower cowl, which I think I showed you guys 2 episodes ago what it looks like at 50 grams, and it's already fairly large. It looks like a little necklace. So that's what I'm currently thinking, getting 2 projects out of this. And the sweater, the rest of the body, it's a free pattern. It's from Knitty. The rest of the body is knit in sport weight, so perhaps I will get some chickadee yarn, and this will be a super luxurious sweater. The colors are showing up more vivid on my screen than they are in real life, so just imagine these as very muted colors. So what I might do is knit up the entrelac panel, and I've never tried entrelac before, and I'm not sure if these color repeats are the right length to work with it, so I might knit that up just to see. And then I can always knit the rest of the sweater at any time when the weather cools off, so that I don't have a bunch of sweater in my lap. But yeah, I'm super in love with this, and I bought this myself. It's definitely a luxury because it's 50% silk, so I think it's $29 a skein. So that's how I'm going to make it go as far as possible. But in the package, Julie included a present for you guys. I am tempted to make it a present for me, but that would not be in the spirit of giving. So, this is her house wren base, which is superwash merino nylon, and it's a tweed. So, and the colorway is Sarah Crew, who is, of course, the heroine of A Little Princess, another one of my childhood favorite books. And is that not such a lovely color? So, I love all the pinks and then the little pops of purple. Here, we'll undo it. So, I do not shy away from the feminine, and this is just, I love this skein. I love the tweediness contrasted with the very feminine colors. So this is going to be a giveaway. I have not decided yet what type of giveaway it should be. Maybe I'll think of something to do for knit along and then it can be a prize, or maybe I'll just give you guys a topic on the next episode if you're interested. But I just wanted to show that to you guys so that, you know, since I was showing everything that's staying with me, that way you guys can see something that'll be a gift for you as well. And more details about that to come on the next episode. What was I going to say? Oh, my current giveaway is for Alice Starmore color cards, and thanks to a very generous viewer who sent me like 10 yards each of all the colors I was missing, which is awesome. I actually used a couple of them in this. But yeah, so you will actually have a complete color card now, whoever wins. And if you buy it from her website, I think it's 16 or 18 pounds, so that's like $25 US, just in case you needed some incentive. And if you do want to enter for that giveaway, I will draw the winner on the next episode. So you have until the next episode goes up, which will hopefully be 2 weeks. And all you need to do is go to the thread in the Ravelry forum and tell me about a project you have knit using 3 or more colors, or just show me a pattern that you like and with 3 or more colors and would enjoy knitting with in the future. And as long as the thread is open, you can enter. I don't care if you're a member of the group or not. Obviously, if you're entering, you watch the podcast. So I look forward to giving that away, and it's open worldwide. I think that is everything, but I'm going to have to start a new segment just to say goodbye. How silly is that? Bye, guys. I will see you hopefully in 2 weeks, and get in touch with me via YouTube, Instagram, or Ravelry.